Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25 Media. We feature top founders, executives, and business leaders from all over the world.
Hello, listeners. Bela Musits here. I'm the host of this Spot On podcast episode, where we feature top restaurateurs, investors, and business leaders. This is part of our Spot On series. Spot On has the best-in-class payment platform for retail, and they have a flagship solution called Spot On Restaurant, where they combine marketing, software, and payments all into one. They have served everyone from larger chains like Dairy Queen and Subway to small mom-and-pop operations. To learn more, go to spoton.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. We help B2B businesses get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships through custom, done-for-you podcast. If you have a B2B business and want to build great relationships with clients, referral partners, and thought leaders in your space, then there's no better way to do it than through podcast and content marketing. To learn more, go to rise25media.com or email us at support@rise25media.com. Today's guest on the podcast is Bennett Maxwell. Bennett has been making use of his selling skills since his days of selling candy bars in elementary school. He's traded in his elementary school candy bar business for something slightly bigger. Bennett is currently lowering business barriers and raising mental health awareness through his cookie selling franchise called Dirty Dough. He stands for authenticity and self-acceptance, encouraging others to come as they are. You might even say that from a business perspective, Bennett is one tough cookie. Welcome to the podcast, Bennett.
Thanks. Appreciate the intro. I need to get I need to take the tough cookie out of that bio.
Well, I thought it was pretty good. So let me ask you a question. If you're at a non-work related social event and you get introduced to someone, and after that introduction, they say to you, "Oh, very nice to meet you, Bennett. What do you do?" How do you answer that question?
Cookies. Just one word.
That's perfect.
Well, here in Utah, we're still fairly new. We opened up our first store in June of last year, so 11 months ago. But due to a lawsuit and some other things, everybody knows who Dirty Dough is. So it gave us some good publicity. I think we have 10 stores that we've opened in Utah as well, maybe 9 in the last year. So
yeah. So tell us a little bit more about Dirty Dough.
Yeah, Dirty Dough serves large gourmet cookies. Every flavor every week there's new flavors. And so we're a competitor to Crumble in that space. And the differentiator, I guess, of us versus them is, to the consumer, these are stuffed cookies. So rather than kind of doing a plain flat cookie with a bunch of frosting on it, we stuff whatever we're going to put instead of on it, but inside. And we do multi-layered cookies. Like a 3-layer cookie, we're the only ones that do that, which is, you look at it, it looks like a peanut butter cookie. You break it open, there's a chocolate dough in the middle, and then there's hot fudge in the very center. And then that goes with the mental health messaging of these cookies represent life, and they're not perfect. They're not supposed to look perfect, right? But they can definitely be enjoyed. So, and there's a lot of other, I guess, tie-ins, but that's kind of the main one. Now, to the franchisee, which I consider my customer more than the end customer, we pre-produce all of the dough at a centralized facility, and we ship out these pre-portioned dough pucks. So you can run large volumes out of these tiny little, 800, 900, 700 square foot retail pad. And then compared to like a Crumble, we're opening up for a half to maybe a third of the cost. But and it's just so much more simple to run. Your overhead's a lot lower, your labor's a lot lower. Because again, anybody can find 1 or 2 employees to work in their store and grab something from the freezer and put it in the oven.
Yeah. Oh, sounds cool. So let's say I'm someone that's interested in opening up one of these stores in my location. Take me through sort of how that works. What are the qualities do you look for in a person who's going to run one of your franchises?
Yeah, the ideal candidate is an existing franchisee of a food brand. So when we find one of those, which is funny because I mean that's who we want to target, and that's also the easiest people to sell. Because if you've never been in food, you don't get the complexities of it. So then you say, "Hey, I got this super simple model," and the people are like, "Oh, that's cool." Well, if you've ran a restaurant before, you're like, "That's amazing, very low waste, 1 or 2 employees." So, and then identifying the area and looking at some demographics of, the competitors, population density. I mean, you can get down to household cookie spending per month.
Yeah.
So then then going and identifying an area, but that's if they're not a food franchise owner, then just being a franchise owner also helps a lot. Or I guess the third option would be you've been in food, but you're not a franchisee.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you help them sort of understand the demographics and is that part of the assistance that you provide?
Yeah. Yeah. So we help them when they're in the sales process to locate a territory, because a lot of territories are starting to fill up. So it's like, oh, I live in Utah, but we're sold out of Utah. Where else can I go? So there's a lot of kind of that back and forth. And then once they actually sign, then we connect them with our realtor partner, and they have every state and city and even shopping mall from a 1 to 200 ranking based on a number of factors. I think there's like 26 different factors it's pulling from. And then 100 is average, 200 is the best. So then you can rank where you're looking at. And it's often that micro demographic rather than macro demographic. So not so much are you in, New York versus New Jersey, but where in New York versus where in New Jersey. And that's where this tool really comes in handy.
Yeah. And do I need to build a dedicated building for this, or I just rent some space?
Yeah,
and
it's
something
usually
that allows food service.
Yep, you're grabbing 800 square feet to 1,200 square feet would be ideal. Strip mall next to like a grocery store. Grocery store already has our target demographic, which are primarily moms, right? Going every day, and if you're within a stone's throw of them, those stores tend to do better.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is fascinating. And so, how much of that 1,200 square feet is sort of, I may not be using the right terms, but sort of the front of the house versus the back of the house?
Yeah, I would say, man, without ever even working in a restaurant myself, you walk in, you maybe have the 15 feet for kind of customers to wait. And then you have a counter. And then the next 15-ish, 20 feet back is kind of where the employees are going to be baking the cookies, putting them in the boxes and handing them to the customer.
Yeah.
And then there's a wall right there. And then on the other side of the wall, there's just 3 compartments, seeing, some storage, a freezer, and a bathroom.
Oh, okay.
So, without percentages, it's pretty small. And that store that I'm describing is 900 square feet, kind of as I walk through it in my mind, but very simple build outs as well.
So I'm actually sort of preparing and baking these cookies in front of the customer.
Yes. Yeah. You still get that. I mean, they're being baked fresh every hour. There's no preservatives used. So you don't suffer at all with the quality, but you still get all the benefits of scale and lower labor, lower waste, all of that, higher quality.
Yeah. And sort of as a franchisee, what's sort of the capital investment that I need to make to get one of these places?
I would say most of them are coming in for mid 200s all in, franchise fee, build out equipment. But some, like, I know Houston was a little bit more expensive than that, where Oklahoma was a little bit cheaper than that. So, but I would say 250 is the average.
Sure. Oh, that's kind of neat. So, when I think about cookies, I love my cookies, that's for sure. But when I go to the grocery store, there's like a whole aisle of cookies, and it's almost overwhelming for me. So what sort of makes these different and better? I mean, I understand the experience is different, right? Because I'm going to get them, but take me through a little bit more of the motivation for all of that.
Yeah. So typically, like a grocery store, if you're buying prepackaged, then, lots of preservatives, the freshness isn't there. Or but you can go to their baking section or their bakery, and those are a lot fresher. I've never seen them served warm, which a warm cookie, I mean, that's the secret, right? You just warm it up, and warm cookie is a big thing. The other thing is just they're giant. These are about 1/3 of a pound. They have toppings, they have drizzles, and those aren't things that would be prepared in that way. And then every week, there's new flavors. So you have your mainstays, and then every week you can go back. And they're just crazy flavors. I mean, I think we're up, 80, 90 recipes right now that are in rotations. So again, grocery store, your chocolate chip macadamia nut. I would just say the flavors is another big thing.
Super. Now, for all these different flavors and the 3 layers you talked about, was that sort of your idea? Are you a cookie baker by trade, or take me through that a little bit?
No, I haven't made it either. I've never made a batch of dirty dough cookies. But the process of, in order for this to have a low enough overhead that we can get through the next recessions coming up, we need to model it after what works, which is Mrs. Fields and Great American Cookie Company. They've both been around for 46 years, have multiple hundred stores. They've gone up and they've gone down, but they use a centralized production model. And they've proven that if you can operate out of less than 1,000 square feet with one employee making a frozen product, very little waste, then it's a sustainable business model. I look at these other cookie companies that everything's done in-house by hand, weighed by hand, portioned by hand. You're mixing 60 cookies at a time. We're doing 4,000. Like, I don't think that those are sustainable models. I think that Crumble's killing it because they're the only ones in most cities, but you see that as competition comes, their top line goes down and their margins just evaporate. So that's kind of where my thinking is. And then, hey, let's find the machine. And then once we found the machine, how can we get a more unique product? So our franchisees, you can't make a 3-layer cookie by hand. You can't make a stuffed cookie. You can't put an ounce of hot fudge in a cookie by hand. You just can't. So then let's get the machines, and then let's leverage the model to give our franchisees a unique product. So we also started doing gluten-free or gluten-friendly cookies, which we're the only chain that I know of that does that, because we only have to do it. You swab one facility rather than all 800 locations. And then we just pre-launched our protein cookie. So it's honestly an amazing cookie and has 25 grams of protein. So we just pre-launched that over the weekend, and it's coming live in stores June 1st. So again, I don't see Crumble doing any of those competitions. So I don't make the recipes, but it's kind of like, hey, how can we leverage this model? Let's get a protein. And then I turn it over to somebody who actually knows how to make a protein cookie.
Yeah. Very nice. Now, the other thing I really like about what you're talking about is with the centralized sort of preparing things and freezing them and then shipping them out to your franchisees, is that you get consistency, right? Yeah. One of the important things in sort of when I become familiar with the dirty dough, then I see another one, I know what I'm going to get when I go into that other one. And if I already know I like it. So I don't have to worry. It's like going into a brand new restaurant for the first time. You're never quite sure what the experience is going to be like. So this consistency in experience is really important. So along those lines, what have you guys done with your franchisees to make sure that experience from the time the customer walks in the door to the time the customer takes the bite of that cookie is really consistent and high quality?
I would say you start with kind of the look and the feel of the store. The layouts are roughly the same. You have a Dirty Dough logo on one side, and then in the background, we do customize that per location, which is fun. So you give me 5 landmarks, and we kind of build it into that wall mural. And then the cookies themselves, again, I mean, when you have a different brand that you have hundreds of locations and all of them are making from scratch, now you're depending on tens of thousands of teenagers. Right. For that quality control when we just do it in one facility. So I think that helps a lot. But having the processes, you can still have the exact same cookie, but if your oven wasn't preheated or you baked it a little bit too long, I mean, they're pretty obvious things, but it can still happen. So making sure that our instructions and our kind of top-down oversight is similar, and then tracking metrics, like we have some cameras with some artificial intelligence technology that it's counting who comes through the door, how long they're staying, so we can track order times and wait times, things like that. And the next thing that we're implementing with the same camera company is, as the employee hands off the cookies to the customer, this will be taking basically a picture of the cookies and measuring 2 things. What is the diameter of the cookie to make sure that some aren't too fat or too spread? And then is the toppings or the drizzles, are they overflowing off the cookie? Because we don't want that. We want them to be able to be eaten in the car or on the go. So that would allow us to give our franchisees instant feedback, which then can trickle down to their employees on any cookies that weren't baked properly or had too much toppings.
Yeah. Wow. What a clever way to kind of sort of do quality assurance. I mean, that's really a great idea. So you get that consistency of experience, right? And you get that consistency of the product. That's super. So let's talk a little bit about why you decided to do this as a franchise model versus other models that are, around for these types of enterprises.
Yeah. As I was exploring that option, I spoke with a group that owns several hundred restaurants here in Utah, and they don't franchise. And I'm asking them, hey, should we franchise? Should we not franchise? And he said, well, is it a new market? Which the gourmet cookie space is a new market. So if the answer is yes, then you need to go quicker. Okay, well, how much capital do you have? Do you have enough to go open up 100 stores?
Right.
Are you sitting on, $25 million or no? So that was another question. And then what do you have that, is patented or a trademark? And the answer is really nothing. I mean, we do a 3-layer cookie. We're the only ones that doing that, but just because we bought the right machine and we figured it out, but we can't patent the process. So somebody else will do that. And then that again is, okay, well, you need to go faster. So based on those, he said, you should franchise. If you're in a new and emerging space, you need to move fast. You don't have a patented product that you can move slow on. So franchise, you can open up. So that facilitates that growth. Plus just the model, it kind of requires fast growth, right? How do you produce a facility and order enough flour to get all of your economies of scale down, as well as order packaging that franchisees buy, drizzles, topping, I mean, just everything.
Right.
How do you get those costs down as quickly as possible? You move fast. So the faster you move, the better it is for the franchisees on the costs as well as corporate. But there's other hiccups that come with fast growth, which we're always dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah. So share one or two of those with us, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. Cookies. So I argue that this is the most simplistic food franchise that someone can buy right now.
Mm-hmm.
And in return, that makes it one of the most complicated franchisor companies you could run right now, because we're not just providing support, but we are also a food manufacturing company now. And we're also a logistics company, so
that's right.
It's a lot more, I guess, trial and error. So one of the things that comes to mind was an error that we had, that we shipped out a bad batch of cookies. And we didn't know it was a bad batch because we tested some at the beginning and some at the end, but something went off anyways. And we're shipping cookies to another state, and the cookies they tasted fine, but the spread was too much and they didn't fit in the packaging. So we couldn't serve those. And it was, you switch flours because one flour is running low. Anyways, you match up unbleached with unbleached, all purpose with all purpose, same protein content with same protein content, but it was the absorption rate that got us. The absorption rate wasn't the same, so that was something that we obviously as corporate, we take the hit on, say, sorry, we return the product and we experience a loss there. But that was, that just happened recently, and it's still on my mind.
Still fresh in your mind, huh? Yeah. I think somebody once said to me that baking, involves chemistry. So the percentage of things and the variability is important.
Yes.
And you have to really control those parameters because, like I said, it's chemistry. It's not just mixing two liquids together and adding a little salt. It's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah. We also do a mobile franchise. So like a food truck or food trailer.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
To allow people to jump into franchising with a lower entry cost and then also lower risk, because you're not signing, a 10-year retail pad with a personal guarantee. You could always move this business, hit up events. If it doesn't go good, go to the next city. Anyways, we just had an event this last week, and it requires a 220 volt plug-in, but there wasn't one available. So it's like, oh, well, we're not serving that many cookies. We already have a warmer inside. Let's just plug in the warmer, because that just needs a 220 or just a normal 120 outlet, but it wasn't wired for that. So the only way to get that warmer on is the 220. So now it's like, now we have to go kind of retrofit that, just something we never thought about.
Yeah.
Retrofit that so it can be plugged in separately along with the lights and the point of sale system. So you can still operate everything but the oven on just a normal outlet, and then make the change going forward. But that was one that I just discovered 2 days ago.
Yeah. 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 When you're doing something new, there's always new discoveries, right?
Yeah.
There's always the unanticipated. Do you provide a level of training for your franchisees?
Yeah. Leading up about a month before their grand opening, there's a 2-day online training that they take. I mean, it could take them more than 2 days, depending on how many hours. Then they fly into Utah, into our headquarters, and they spend a day or two at our facility being trained by us and third-party vendors, and the marketing side and the point of sale side, technical support, just getting to know everybody. And then they also do an opening shift in the store and in an actual storefront, and a closing shift. So they work a full day as well. So, I mean, in a week you have, and some people are like, oh, that's pretty quick training, only 2 or 3 days in person. And then other people are like, well, what are you going to train me on? It's just putting cookies in the oven. And I tend to agree with the latter part, but we go over everything to really provide that training. And then there's video courses and stuff that they can refer to. And we're always building that out. Cool.
And let's say I opened one of these here in my town in upstate New York, Albany. Do you help me get the word out? Do you help me do advertising? Is there some kind of program that we can sign up for?
Yes, we use the same company that does our social media marketing. We pay for that, and that's in the FDD. The franchise disclosure document is included in the grand opening costs. So that's taken care of for you with corporate. Now, the franchisees that have the best grand openings on top of what we do, which is, putting the social media out and just advertising it, trying to get some PR around it. The franchisees, though, on top of that, they sometimes go get their own PR. And that is probably the biggest impact, is if you have, a local news station covering it or not, or multiple. Sure. And then some of them have also contacted like cities that they're opening and saying, hey, can you post this on your social media accounts? And then you get like the, Miss Albany, they have that, to show up with the ribbon cutting ceremony. So there's a few creative things that we recommend that our franchisees do.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we will do it regardless of if they're doing it on their own front.
Yeah. Yeah. Super. Now let's take a little switch and sort of go back to selling those candy bars in elementary school. So talk to me a little bit about, your journey to get here.
I grew up here in Utah. I was number 7 of 9 kids. So I was towards the end with a single mom. And so it was hectic, and you were just hustling all the time to get what you needed to get. So yeah, it started early on, and me and my brothers would just find any ways you can make money. So selling candy bars at school, or selling shaved ice, like snow cones on the corner, or we did lemonade stands. Started going door to door in junior high to sell lawn aeration with some of my brothers. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of got me in that mindset of, which I think is a very important mindset for business, like just get out there, right? Go try. And if you fail, it doesn't really matter. You gained experience. And with that experience typically comes confidence, which is worth way more than whatever you lost, in time or finances, because now you're way more confident at the next gig. So just starting off on that sales game and the hustle kind of, entrepreneur as a little kid, I think was super beneficial, and leading me to now owning Dirty Dough. Before I had a solar company. Before that, I was doing door-to-door sales, but I was able to exceed in all of that because of that mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. And what, as you think about building this out further, how do you think about sort of leadership and culture within the business and your franchisees?
I think it's everything. I mean, it's super important. It's something that I'm not good at all. Mm-hmm. One of the first things I did the month that we franchised, about 18 months ago, I hired on a CEO that has been doing this for quite a while. She did Maui Wowie smoothies and coffee. In 83, grew it to over 650 locations before selling it, and then took another brand 0 to 90 in a few years. So she's way better at that. So I think it is very important. I also recognize that I'm not the best one to do that. So I hired a CEO that could do that. And we're still building that. making sure that the leadership is, the top leadership is right. And then that everything kind of trickles down in their organizations, because we kind of had to have a head over our logistics company, our production company, over the franchise company, et cetera. So just making sure, I guess, it's top down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's unusual that to hear a founder say, "Hey, I understand what my limitations are, and I know I don't know how to do these things well, so I'm going to bring someone else in who really does those well." So my hat's off to you for kind of, number one, recognizing it and then doing something about it, right? As opposed to going to get a book on leadership and reading it and say, "Okay, now I know how to do this."
Yeah, it's a lot more effective for me to stick with what I'm good at, and I make more money doing that, and I make the company more money doing that. So I don't know if it's worth the time to pick up a book and try to learn everything, rather than just like, I'm just going to stay in my lane and hire somebody smarter than me.
Yeah. Yeah. So if let's say someone is listening to this podcast and they're graduating soon and they're thinking of maybe opening a franchise of some sort, what sort of advice would you give them?
Talk to current franchisees, because you have whatever the experience that the salesperson gives you or portrays to you, and then you have some information on the franchise disclosure documents. But really, I think it's just so relationship based, at least for us, with being so new, and opening up so many stores all at once. Kind of, there's a lot of hiccups, and it's, are franchisees okay with that? Are we okay with that? Anyway, so those are things that only existing franchisees can really know about. And then the other thing is, there's some great loan options for franchises. So you don't need to have, 250 cash or 500 cash. You can have 50 cash, pay the franchise fee, go get an SBA loan, a 10-year SBA loan with decent rates. And so you can get in a little bit sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Excellent. That's great advice. So, Bennett, where can listeners go to find out more about Dirty Dough?
DirtyDough.com. So that has the information. I think we have 19 stores that we've opened, and then it shows all the coming soons. I think we're going to end the summer with around 60 open locations, which is exciting. So there's a lot more coming on there.
Yeah.
And then there's also, information on franchising. To connect with me, I do try to post daily some good content on business ownership and mental health and purpose-based businesses, things like that. So Bennett Maxwell, just my first and last name.com, has links to all the social medias.
Yeah, excellent. So that just reminded me of one thing. So one other question. You talked a little bit about mental health, and it's part of was in your intro as well. Expand upon that a little bit.
I had a solar company that I worked really hard at, and I have a wife and 3 kids, and I was working the nights and the weekends because it was going to be worth it. When XYZ happened, which was X amount of dollars in the bank or residual or whatever that was. Well, I sold the company just under 2 years ago, and almost immediately I got that dopamine rush, and I felt great. I had the cash, I had some residual, I had a handful of rental properties, whatever, but that goes away. Right. And then I immediately was like, okay, well, what's the next goal that I'm going to do until I give myself more free time to be, on vacations with my family, to therefore make me happier. So after I sold the solar company, I realized that rut that I was in, and I knew I was going to put the next shiny object out there to feel better when I hit that. So I really did some internal soul searching, my midlife crisis. And I narrowed it down to like, what do I want? What is my mission? And it's to find joy and fulfillment despite life's dirtiness in myself and others. So, and that's now Dirty Dough's mission statement as well, but it's all about joy and fulfillment despite life's dirtiness. Is don't wait to sell the solar company. Don't wait for life to be perfect. You need to have that now, and you need to focus on yourself first, and then you can start helping other people. So that, and just having kids and knowing the mental health crisis is like over 50% of women or girls before they're in like high school experience. I forgot what it was, like lasting sadness or something like that, or depressive and it's just like, what do you do? What is causing that? And it's the Instagram effect, the social media effect of my reality is where I'm at, right? But the expectation of where I think I should be continues to increase higher and higher as I look at everybody else's highlight reels on social media. And that distance between expectation and reality is causing the sadness, depression, anxiety. So how do you fight against that? And I wanted to do that with our product. Like the cookie is not supposed to look perfect, and it doesn't need to look perfect. And then so all the messaging and the branding around the company, whether you're in store or on the windows or on each of our packaging, you'll see things like, we care about your feelings, or the inside matters most, or, life gets messy and that's okay. Things like that.
Oh, cool. Cool. That's a really nice link. What? That's just a great way to finish up the podcast. Those are some really thoughtful words on your part. Bennett, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You were a wonderful guest, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25. Visit rise25.com to check out more episodes of the show and to learn more about how you can start your own podcast.